name is Jax, and today I'm going to be talking about the federal minimum wage. So to start off, I'd just like to say that in 12 years, inflation has risen nearly 29%. That number is way too high, but when you also consider the fact that over 12 years, the average price of a home has gone from $271,000 to $451,000. That jump in average home price is nearly 166%. That number is just insane. But to top it all off, for 12 years, the federal minimum wage has been $7.25. That is unsustainable. How can any effective economy have the lowest common denominator of people who don't make enough to survive? It doesn't make sense. Like I said earlier, the housing market is up 166%, while the minimum wage is flatlining at zero. How is this sustainable? Another example is the renting market. We all know the evil landlord who controls the prices and hikes them way up high. Well, they can. They have a monopoly in this situation, so they can charge whatever they want. And they have been. The average rent in 2009 was $1,100 and something dollars, right? Now we're at $1,470. Where's that extra $300 coming from when the minimum wage has stayed the same? It's going to lead to a crisis, a poverty crisis. In 2009, there were about 14.3% of Americans in poverty, about 43 million people. Well, now that number has gone to 13.4%. Better, right? Well, America's population has increased. 44 million people are living in poverty now. That's 1 million more people than were in 2009. I don't think 1 million people is anything to scoff about. Now, for something that might quite not make sense. The minimum wage has been the same since the 1980s. Well, what do you mean by that? I'm going to reference this video by Vox to help further explain it.
This is a chart of the minimum wage in the United States over the past 60 years. You can see how it's gone up and up and up from $1 an hour in 1960 to $7.25 today. Go America, right? But this chart is actually pretty misleading. If you take the same line but adjust it for inflation, you'll see the problem. Every time the minimum wage has been raised, inflation has dragged it right back down. Really, America's minimum wage hasn't gone up. It's essentially stayed the same since the 80s. What you're seeing here, this constant up and down, this is weird. It's not how the rest of the world does it, and it leads to a bunch of problems for American workers and businesses. But it doesn't have to be this way.
So,
this is a chart of the minimum wage in the United.
Thank you. Yes, that video is a little extreme, but it's essential to understand that whenever the minimum wage is raised at such sharp amounts all at once, it's going to cause unrest in the economy. And that's just what happened then. So, yes, for all the naysayers, increasing the minimum wage by that much all at one time will cause economic booms or inflation or deflation. It's hard to predict. That is why it is essential to raise the minimum wage progressively. I'm going to reference this video once again.
Predictable. Look at this period. Starting in 1997, the minimum wage sat at $5.15 an hour for 10 years. Then it was raised in 2007 to $7.25 by 2009. Cool, but that's a 40% increase in a pretty short time, after a decade of inaction. How do you plan for that if you own a business?
Not having that consistency does raise a lot of problems for business owners. Will they have to lay off employees? Will they have to reduce work hours? Or will they just raise prices on their customers?
Imagine how much smoother that could all go if the minimum wage just kind of went up over time. Well, we don't have to imagine it. In France, they automatically raise their minimum wage every single year. They tie it to inflation, the average salary of a French worker. In Australia, a commission reviews the minimum wage every year, considering economic factors like inflation.
The video goes on to explain how a lot of other countries raise their minimum wage progressively, and it seems to be quite an effective system. But now I'd like to talk about another perspective, women in minimum wage. So, by raising the minimum wage, people, especially women, would be able to lead more fulfilling lives. They'd be able to live more comfortably and be happier. But also, a higher minimum wage would mean people would live longer. Studies have shown that higher wages lead to better access to healthcare services and, subsequently, longer lives. It will also lead to increased productivity. The healthcare industry is dominated by women, so raising the minimum wage in the healthcare industry would help incentivize their workers to be more productive. This would also help to close the wage gap. Because the healthcare industry is dominated by women, raising their minimum wage would help shrink the wage gap. I think something we can all agree upon. Raising the minimum wage would also affect mental health. Higher wages would grant people access to better healthcare services, such as therapy or just mental health counseling. This would lead to huge benefits. People would be more stable and they would be more productive in their day-to-day lives. So overall, the federal minimum wage as it is right now is not sustainable. We know it's not enough. There are many options for raising it, such as the sharp increases we saw in 2007 to 2009, where it went from $5.15 to $7.25, or the gradual increases such as other countries do. And there are so many benefits to raising the minimum wage. Longer lifespans, happier quality of life, better access to healthcare services. I hope you see now why it is imperative that we raise the minimum wage. Thank you.